Most people don't stay broke because they're lazy. They stay broke because it's familiar. And your brain will do almost anything to avoid the unknown, even if the unknown is better. That's the paradox. You've been taught to chase freedom, but when it shows up, naked and full of risk, you run back to your cage. Because at least in the cage, you know the rules. You know what tomorrow feels like. And predictable misery, for many people, feels safer than uncertain power. Here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Being broke can feel like home. It gives you an identity, a struggle, a story. It gives you an excuse. And in a strange way, it gives you peace because you're not forced to become someone new. That's the addiction, not to poverty, but to the psychological clarity it offers. No pressure to perform, no threat of betrayal or exposure, no test of your worth, just the familiar weight of not enough. Before we go deeper, quick ask. If this already hit a nerve, tap like, subscribe, and share this with someone stuck in the same mental trap. We're not here to hustle or pitch. We're here to explore the hidden relationship between money, identity, power, and the raw psychology beneath it all. So if you're ready for clarity, not comfort, stick around. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Have you ever noticed how people often recreate the same financial pain over and over, even when they have options? They get a raise and instantly find new bills. They escape debt only to fall back in. They swear they'll change and then quietly go numb. It's not a logic problem. It's a nervous system problem. Because somewhere deep inside, you've linked certainty with safety. And your current level of pain, financial or otherwise, has become the devil you know. Think about it like this. If you grew up hearing money doesn't grow on trees, or people like us don't get rich, or worse, watching your parents fight over every dime, that becomes baseline reality for your body. It wires in, emotionally. So when you suddenly start making more money, or saving more, or investing more, it's not just new, it's unnerving. Your subconscious goes, this isn't normal, this isn't safe, let's screw this up. And you do. Not because you're broken, because your inner world is just trying to stay consistent, even if that consistency keeps you broke. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called cognitive closure. It means the human mind craves clear, finished, resolved stories. Ambiguity creates stress. Uncertainty triggers threat. So we rush to explain things even if the explanation is toxic. So what do you do when your finances don't make sense? You fill in the blanks with familiar pain. I guess I'm just bad with money. I'm not the kind of person who gets ahead. I don't have rich friends. That stuff's not for me. This is just how life is. And in telling those stories, you seal the cage. This is why people with tons of potential often sabotage themselves the moment things start going right. They ghost job interviews. They skip the budget. They buy things to feel good, even though it makes them feel worse. It's not irrational, it's pattern completion. Your system is just returning to the narrative it knows. And this is where it gets darker. That familiar pain doesn't just exist, it becomes your compass. It tells you who to trust, who to date, where to live, how much you're allowed to ask for. It even determines how you feel around people who don't share your financial anxiety. You'll either idolize them or resent them, sometimes both. But you won't feel like you belong with them. And that's the trap. There's a study where rats were shocked randomly while exploring one side of a cage. Eventually, they stopped exploring altogether. Not because the other side was dangerous, but because they'd learned that seeking something new equaled punishment. Many people are living in that same experiment. Anytime they tried to level up, their nervous system remembers every failed attempt, every disappointment, every time someone mocked them for trying. And so they settle. Not because they've done the math, but because they're afraid to be shocked again. You see this in multi-generational poverty all the time. Not because it's genetic, but because it becomes culturally logical to play small, to distrust ambition, to associate money with guilt or shame or selling out. So let's be honest. If you've been broke for a long time, financially, emotionally, or both, you don't just fear failure, you fear power. Because power comes with risk. It comes with exposure. It comes with the demand to change. Not just your bank account, but your self-image, your relationships, your choices. And for most people, that's scarier than staying stuck. Because if you stay broke, you can always blame the system. But if you grow and still feel empty, now it's your fault. Now you're responsible. And that is what truly terrifies people. So the first real step to changing your financial reality isn't a new budget. It's not a side hustle. It's not waking up earlier. It's this. Admit that you're more comfortable with your pain than you are with your power. That sentence alone can unravel years of subconscious defense. But you need to see it. You need to sit with it. You need to stop pretending that someday you'll magically get rich without disrupting your emotional world. Because you won't. You can't. And the sooner you see that, the sooner you stop waiting for permission. Now let's go deeper. Because if you know this trap exists, and you still keep repeating it, there's something else happening under the surface. And it's not weakness. It's biology.
You're not sabotaging yourself because you're weak. You're doing it because your body believes it's protecting you. There's a brutal truth buried under most financial failures. They're not accidents. They're defense mechanisms. Your nervous system is built for survival, not success. So when success starts to feel unsafe, when more money, more visibility, or more options disrupt your emotional status quo, your system quietly hits the brakes. Not to punish you, to protect you from the unfamiliar. Let's break that down. The brain's primary job isn't to make you happy, it's to keep you alive. And one of the ways it does that is by clinging to predictability. So if you spend years, maybe even decades, experiencing struggle, scarcity, or guilt around money, your brain labels that state as normal. And once something becomes normal, your body starts defending it like it's home turf, even if it sucks. This is why people will fight to preserve a terrible financial situation. They'll reject help, blow opportunities, even mock others who are trying to improve their lives. Not because they're dumb, because their nervous system interprets change as danger. To understand this better, you have to realize safety is not the same as comfort. Sometimes the most emotionally safe place feels awful, but it's familiar. And familiarity equals survival in the primitive parts of your brain. That's why the moment you start doing something new, saving money, raising your rates, breaking from your family's financial script, you feel anxious, irritable, foggy, even physically sick. That's not a sign something's wrong. It's a sign your nervous system is panicking. There's a concept in trauma psychology called window of tolerance. It refers to the emotional bandwidth you can handle without becoming dysregulated. When you're inside the window, you feel okay, focused, calm, present. When you're outside it, you either shut down or spin out. Now here's the catch. Your window of tolerance isn't just about stress. It also applies to success. If you've never felt emotionally safe while having more than enough, if abundance was always tied to fear, judgment, or betrayal, then abundance itself becomes a threat, and your body will reject it. It's not theoretical. It shows up in real life. You avoid checking your bank account, even when it's growing. You feel guilty buying something nice, even when it's earned. You downplay your wins, you sabotage progress so things feel balanced again. That's not carelessness. That's a regulation strategy. Your system is trying to pull you back into its familiar emotional baseline. Think of it like your brain has a thermostat, and that thermostat is set based on your early experiences. If you grew up around financial stress, or learned that money causes conflict, or absorbed the belief that wanting more makes you selfish, then your internal thermostat is probably set to just survive, not thrive. So even if life gives you more heat, more money, more options, your system works to cool it back down,
to return to the emotional temperature it understands. It's why lottery winners go bankrupt. It's why people leave toxic jobs only to recreate the same dynamics elsewhere. It's why success, without nervous system work, feels like walking into the sun with no skin. You burn. Here's where things get even more frustrating. You can intellectually know that more money would improve your life. You can make spreadsheets, read books, follow financial gurus. But if your nervous system doesn't feel safe with money, none of that sticks. It's like trying to rewire your computer using a paintbrush. You're working at the wrong level. Because the sabotage doesn't come from your mind, it comes from your body. Your breath shortens. Your stomach knots. Your focus scatters. You scroll. You distract. You default. And just like that, you're back in the cage, where it's awful, yes, but at least you know how it works. This isn't a motivational speech. This is biology. Your vagus nerve, which governs how you regulate stress, has been trained by your past. If it learned that money equals conflict, change, or exposure, it will trigger a stress response when you even think about having more. That's why growth doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like grief. Because when you start moving toward wealth, you're not just chasing a better life. You're leaving behind a system of emotional survival. And your body feels that loss, even when it's the right move. There's a famous experiment where dogs were put in a cage with an electric floor. At first, they tried to escape. Eventually, they stopped, even when the door was open. It's called learned helplessness. Now imagine growing up in an environment where effort didn't lead to a reward, where no matter how hard your parents worked, money never lasted, where rich people were always villains, where emotional neglect was paired with financial instability. You don't just internalize poverty, you embody it. Your system stops even trying to reach for more because it assumes the outcome will be pain. Even freedom feels suspicious. You start thinking things like, what's the catch? What if I lose it all? People will expect more from me. I don't want to be like them. And all those thoughts feel like rationality, but they're fear disguised as logic. So what do? You start by stopping the self-blame. You are not weak. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You're wired. Wired by experience, by memory, by biology. And just like a thermostat can be reset, your system can be retrained. But not through force, not through shame, through awareness, through safety, through slowly teaching your body that it's okay to have more, that you won't die from being seen, that peace isn't a betrayal of your past, that thriving doesn't make you selfish, that power isn't the enemy. And the next time you catch yourself pulling back, the moment things start to go well, you'll know what's happening. Not failure, not weakness, just your nervous system doing its outdated job. And that awareness, that's your leverage. Because now you're not a puppet, you're a pattern breaker. But awareness isn't enough. Now we need to talk about the drug you've been hooked on without realizing it. It's not money, it's comfort, and it's killing your momentum. Comfort isn't what you think it is. It's not the warm blanket, the soft bed, or the quiet evening. It's not peace. It's not safety. It's not pleasure. Comfort is what's predictable, what your nervous system can prepare for, even if it sucks. That's why people stay in jobs they hate, why they stay in relationships that drain them, why they stay broke even when they desperately want more. Because being broke isn't always painful. Sometimes it's just numb. And numbness is easier to tolerate than the chaos of actual change. Here's the brutal truth. Comfort is the most addictive substance on earth. Not because it feels amazing, but because it lets you avoid uncertainty. And when you've been wired to fear the unknown, you'll chase any escape from it, even if that escape is your own destruction. Let's be clear. This isn't about discipline or motivation or grit. You can be smart, talented, even hardworking, and still find yourself sinking back into comfort every time growth starts knocking. Why? Because real growth doesn't feel like a motivational poster. It feels like exposure, like disorientation, like grief. It means letting go of the identity that got you here. And your system won't give that up without a fight. So instead, you default to what's easy: the same Netflix show, the same habits, the same excuses, the same familiar emptiness that's at least predictable. You scroll, you snack, you buy things to simulate control. And all of it feels normal. But normal isn't the same as right. It's just what doesn't threaten your identity. Here's where it gets more dangerous. Comfort isn't just a feeling. It becomes your logic. It convinces you that risk is irrational, that ambition is unrealistic, that wanting more makes you ungrateful. You start hearing the voice in your head say things like, "Now isn't the right time. You don't really need that much. Better not get greedy. You're lucky to have what you've got." That voice sounds wise, cautious, reasonable, but it's not reason. It's regulation. It's your nervous system trying to keep things emotionally stable by dragging you back into the territory it understands. Not enough. There's a psychological principle called homeostasis, your body's tendency to maintain internal stability. It applies to your temperature, your heart rate, your blood sugar, but it also applies to your identity. If your internal self-image says, "I'm just someone who gets by," then any major financial gain threatens that equilibrium. Your mind goes, "This isn't who we are. Let's fix that." So you do. You undersell. You overgive. You take the safer job. You pass on the investment. You stay quiet when you should have asked for more. And slowly the world realigns with your self-perception, and you call that reality. But it's not reality. It's an emotional comfort zone that's hijacked your future. Let's go deeper. Most people think they fear failure, but failure is actually familiar. You failed before, you've survived, you know what it feels like. You know what to say, how to act, what story to tell. You can explain failure, but success? That's a blank slate. And blank slates are terrifying because they demand you write the script without any guarantees, without a safety net, without someone else to blame. So instead of stepping into that blank space, people retreat back into the pain they know, back into the cage with familiar shadows, because the unknown isn't just scary, it's identity erasing. It forces you to become someone new, someone you don't recognize yet, someone who can no longer relate to the people, the places, the stories that kept you safe. And for most people, that feels like death. You see this with people who lose weight, then gain it back, because their identity was still tied to struggle. Or people who pay off debt and then suddenly create new debt, because their mind doesn't know how to feel safe with peace. Or people who leave toxic environments only to sabotage new ones, because dysfunction is familiar. It's why comfort is so seductive, because it makes you feel like yourself, even if yourself is hurting. It doesn't ask you to evolve. It doesn't ask you to confront trauma. It doesn't ask you to disappoint others. It just keeps the lights dim and the volume low. And for a nervous system raised on chaos, that's heaven. But here's the thing no one tells you. Comfort is not peace. Comfort is avoidance. It's the emotional equivalent of junk food. Tastes fine in the moment, leaves you emptier after, and slowly kills your potential.
Because every time you choose comfort over clarity, you reinforce the cage. You tell your system, yep, this is who I am. This is what we do. This is where we stay. And the longer you do that, the harder it gets to leave. Not because you can't, but because you forget how to want more. You stop dreaming. You stop planning. You stop expecting anything better. You trick yourself into thinking that ambition is arrogance, that growth is selfish, that success is unnatural. And the worst part? You start to judge people who don't settle because they remind you of what you gave up on. Let me say something clearly. Wanting more doesn't make you greedy. It makes you awake. But waking up from the drug of comfort requires you to sit in discomfort, to let things be uncertain, to feel unsafe, unbalanced, unprepared. Not forever, just long enough to show your system that you won't die from being free. Because that's what your body needs to learn, that discomfort doesn't equal danger, that power doesn't equal abandonment, that new doesn't equal wrong, and that you don't need to trade your soul for stillness. The first time you break this pattern, it'll feel wrong. It'll feel like betrayal. It'll feel like you're stepping into someone else's life. Good. That means it's working. Because comfort will never birth transformation. Only discomfort can. And if you're willing to sit in that fire, even briefly, you'll finally begin to remember what you were before the numbness took over. Not just someone with money, someone with choice. And that, more than anything else, is what your old self feared. Next, we'll explore the ceilings you didn't even realize you were living under. Not physical limits, psychological ones.
There's a cage you can't see, and it's not built from walls or bars. It's built from assumptions, inherited beliefs, unspoken rules, generational scripts so old they feel like truth. You didn't choose them, but you live by them every day. These are your invisible limits, and they're running your financial life whether you know it or not. Start with this question. How much money feels like too much? Don't answer with what you want. Answer with what your body believes. When you imagine yourself making twice what you do now, do you feel excited or do you flinch? Does your mind flood with possibilities or guilt? Because here's what most people don't realize. Your internal ceiling isn't set by ambition. It's set by identity. Specifically, what version of reality your mind was taught to call normal. And if normal meant paycheck to paycheck, if normal meant watching your parents argue over rent, if normal meant being told rich people were greedy, evil, or fake, then success won't feel like progress. It'll feel like disloyalty. Let's go deeper. We tend to think of money as neutral. It's not. Money carries meaning, deep emotional meaning. For some, money means power. For others, pain. For many, it means danger. Because if you grew up watching money hurt people, cause fights, create separation, bring stress or shame, then your system learned that having less was safer. That less means love. That less means acceptance. That less means you don't have to outgrow anyone. So without realizing it, you start shrinking your desires to match your social surroundings. Not because you're incapable, because you're afraid of exile. Humans are tribal. We'll sacrifice nearly anything to stay connected to the people who shaped us, even our own potential. You'll see it in someone who undercharges for their work, even though they're brilliant, or someone who never applies for the better job, even though they're qualified, or someone who gets a financial windfall and immediately gives it away, because deep down, a part of them is saying, if I grow too far, I'll lose my place. That's the unspoken rule. Don't outshine your origin. Don't make others feel small. Don't break the script. Stay where you're supposed to be. Quiet, grateful, and a little bit stuck. This shows up everywhere. People raised in working-class families who develop guilt around financial success. First-generation wealth builders who feel isolated from their roots. Creatives who avoid charging fair rates because they fear being seen as sellouts. Immigrants who equate survival with silence, even when they have valuable ideas. These aren't isolated cases. They're patterns, passed down like heirlooms. Not through genes, but through glances, warnings, side comments, and stories. You think you're better than us now? Don't forget where you came from. Money changes people. Those phrases build ceilings, not with force, with guilt. Let's pause here. You might be wondering, okay, but how do I know what my internal ceiling is? Look for the places where your progress plateaus, where your energy suddenly disappears, where you make just enough, but never more. Then ask, who would I upset if I got everything I wanted? Who would I leave behind? What part of myself would I have to bury? And you'll start to feel it. That subtle emotional weight, that flicker of fear, that moment of, maybe I should just stay here. That's your ceiling talking. Not logic, not truth, just the ghost of someone else's fear still living in your mouth. This is why mindset hacks don't work. You can't affirm your way out of a cage you've mistaken for home. Because until you confront the invisible rules running your life, you will always find a way to sabotage your progress. You'll call it bad luck, or timing, or I just wasn't ready. But what you're really saying is, I hit the edge of who I believe I'm allowed to become. And that edge doesn't just sit in your mind. It lives in your nervous system, your posture, your tone of voice, your reactions to other people's success. Let me give you an example. Take someone who grows up watching their parent work 3 jobs and still struggle. That person might associate hardship with love, sacrifice, and moral purity. So when they grow older and start earning easily, maybe through creativity, online income, or luck, they feel like they've cheated. They might even create struggle to feel worthy again. Delay invoices, take on low-paying clients, overwork themselves for no reason, because they were taught that ease means they're doing something wrong. And until that belief is named and unhooked, it'll keep driving every financial decision they make. Here's the part no one talks about. To raise your ceiling, you don't just need more knowledge. You need a new emotional baseline. You need to normalize peace, normalize overflow, normalize being seen in your full capacity without guilt or apology. You need to feel what it's like to be powerful and still safe. And that takes more than a new budget. It takes grief. Grieving the identity that kept you small. Grieving the relationships that might not follow you. Grieving the part of you that thought survival was the highest good. That's what no one tells you. Growth hurts. Not because it's bad, but because it means shedding the skin of everything you thought was unchangeable. So if you've ever wondered why you can't seem to break past a certain level of income, why your progress feels capped, why you always end up right back where you started, check your ceiling. Check the emotional contracts you're still honoring. Check the ghosts you're still loyal to. Because it's not about whether you deserve more. It's about whether you believe you're allowed to have it. And if you're ready to push beyond that invisible line, to finally stop negotiating with the stories that kept you small, then you have to face the next layer, the rawest one, the one most people avoid. It's not about money at all. It's about who you think you are and what money says about that.
Let's get brutally honest. Money isn't just currency. It's emotional. It's wrapped in shame, ego, love, rejection, and survival. Most people think they're just bad at saving or not lucky with money. But here's what's actually happening. When you start making more money than your parents ever did, when you charge more than your friends think you're worth, when you outgrow the version of you that struggled paycheck to paycheck, your identity panics. Your brain thinks, who do you think you are? Are you abandoning the people who made you? Will they still love you if you outgrow them? Are you even safe up here? Because now you're no longer the underdog. You're no longer struggling, which means you lose the one story that always gave you comfort. At least I'm trying. Now you've got something to lose. That fear, it's not logical, it's primal. It's your nervous system saying, this much power feels unsafe. This much freedom feels lonely. And so you find subtle ways to sabotage. You don't follow up, you undercharge, you forget to send the invoice, you spend more than you make, you chase chaotic clients and avoid stable systems. Because if you ever truly felt wealthy, you'd have to feel all the things wealth brings up: responsibility, separation, visibility, risk. And if you tied your worth to being the struggler, then success feels like death. Not of your body, of your identity. Here's the part nobody wants to hear. If you actually want wealth, you're going to have to betray the identity that kept you broke. Not your family, not your friends, but the version of you that found safety in struggle. You'll have to let go of the person who never charged enough, the person who played small to be liked, the person who needed chaos to feel alive, the person who waited for permission, the person who told themselves, once I'm finally ready. That version of you can't come, because wealth isn't just about what you gain. It's about what you lose. You lose excuses. You lose invisibility. You lose the comfort of blaming someone else. And if you've spent your whole life clinging to those things for safety, then freedom is going to feel like a betrayal. But here's the thing, it should feel like betrayal. You're not supposed to be loyal to the version of you that stayed small. You're supposed to outgrow them. That's not arrogance. That's evolution.